We're back. Also this. I'm pretty excited.
Did you miss that?
I had to dust off the old train whistle, so I'd give a couple toots in here.
You two have been apart for far too long.
Far too long. Now, something that you guys might not know, this is the first episode of season 3 of the train station. So I'm pumped about that. It's a new season. I've got some exciting...
Is this our first one of 220 or 2020?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. It's going to be pretty cool. In today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about the why and the how when it comes to training with toys and the benefits that toys can play in your training. You know, we love to use food because we know the value of food, and we've really, figured out how to use food as a valuable currency for dogs. But we also know that using a toy in your training can be really valuable. Using a toy sometimes instead of food can be a really great way to unlock some drive and unlock some of your dog's potential. So I'm pretty excited about diving into the show today. Let's see where we are. Yeah, we got a couple minutes left in the pre-show. I noticed that looks like little ghost baby. It's the first time to the train station.
Nice.
Welcome to the train station. I want to welcome all of you guys back. It's been a little while off. We had a little bit of a break. We got to go with our dogs to Florida, do some fun stuff, got to bike with them every day. That was pretty neat.
That was super fun.
Yeah. So, but today's show, there's a lot of comments on a couple of our Walking on Leash videos. And it's been really, really interesting seeing some of the comments in there and some of the struggles that you have at home. I know that some of you guys are looking to, really increase your dog's drive on you when we talk about attention and for some exercises. But I know some of you are also a little bit apprehensive about using food, and we might talk a little bit in this about I can understand why you might feel that way, but why it can be such a valuable tool as well. But today's show is going to be focused on toy training. So even if you've got a dog that isn't that interested in toys, we're going to show you exactly how to increase some of that toy drive for your dog, because it can be such a valuable thing.
Some dogs do it naturally, and some dogs you kind of have to train them to be a bit more interested in the food. But it is really valuable because it's nice to be able to have more than one option in order to give your dog positive feedback, because there isn't just one way to do it. There's all kinds of ways, and dogs appreciate lots of different things. And sometimes one type of reward that we use in one scenario might not be as exciting or work as well as one that we would use in, a different scenario. So we're going to touch base on all of that stuff tonight.
Absolutely. I want to welcome Karen Kindley. First time that she caught alive. Welcome to the train station. I see lots of new people jumping in here. I also see Susan Robinson mentioned she's getting a golden puppy on Saturday.
That's fun.
Very exciting. So congratulations, and enjoy the process. Enjoy the training process and welcoming that dog into your household. And we have tons and tons of videos on the channel that will help you out. And actually, there's a video on Sunday that's going to be really helpful for you. It's all about puppy training, so pay attention to that. But in this episode, we're talking all about using toys in training, the why and the how. I'm Ken Steepe.
I'm Kayl McCann.
Welcome back to McCann Dogs. Now, maybe this is your first time here on McCann Dogs. My name's Ken Steepe. This is Kayl McCann. We're professional dog trainers at McCann Professional Dog Trainers. And at McCann Dogs, we get to help more than 500 dogs and their owners every week for those dogs to become well-behaved four-legged family members, to walk on a loose leash, to stop jumping up, to deal with all the same challenges that you're probably dealing with right now. And we've got maybe almost 500 videos on the channel that can help you out, but we love to do these lives to answer your questions. So if you have a question about your training specifically for the first little while, maybe we like to schedule out the first 45 to talk specifically about whatever the topic is. And today it's using toys in training. But we might have a chance at the end to talk a little bit about some other dog training related stuff. We'll just sort of play it by ear. But you guys know how important it is to us to get a little help from our friends in these shows. And we couldn't put these on without the help of our amazing moderators. We see SD Cruiser. I saw him earlier in the chat. But we also know Dan the Man Luton, who is all over these things. We actually bring him in via satellite. We just can't have it on the screen. I go to our satellite feed for Dan the Man. So what I like to do is click the beeps and the bloops, and let's see what Dan is up to right now. There he is. Hey, buddy. So that is Dan the Man. You will see him in the chat. If you're looking for links or you're looking for, he'll have all kinds of resources. He does a really nice job of sharing resources into the chat, and he'll answer lots of your questions. Actually, I'd like to give a special shout out.
Okay.
I think I'll give a toot for each of them, because we know helping Dan tonight is our little helpers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to give a toot for each of them.
I think he means Olivia
Yeah.
and Anna.
Yeah.
Dan and Ellen's kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's for Liv and Anna. So we wanted to give you guys a toot. Okay, the other thing that was really interesting that I've been working on a lot, because we get so many questions and emails to our office staff about getting some equipment and what we're using. And you might see us using some of it tonight, but I finally have our online training equipment available. It's now available online. We have a McCann Dogs store for you guys. And tonight, and this is just to get things up and running, test things out. We've actually, I didn't tell anybody about the store, and people have been finding it somehow. So I've squirreled away some of the products out of our physical store and put them in our online. So there's limited quantities there, but for you guys tonight, for the next 24 hours, maybe you're watching this on the replay, we've got 20% off.
That's awesome.
If you jump into the store. So that's only going to go on for tonight. So grab that stuff, and there isn't a lot of it because I couldn't take too much away from our in-class students. So make sure that you check that out. Now, I see lots of people talking in the chat.
Yeah,
I really,
good questions so
really
far.
love to know. I really want to roll this thing. Where are you joining us from? Here in episode 1 of season 3 of the train station. Let us know by dropping your location in the chat. And I'm always so amazed, and especially even after the show, we see in the replay, there'll be people like jumping in from all over the world.
Yeah,
it's so much fun.
Indiana, almost said India. Maybe that's the case too.
Yeah, we might see some people joining us from southern India. I see Phoenix, Arizona, Lafayette, Louisiana, Chicago, North New Jersey, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Gainesville, Florida. We were just down in Florida.
Yes, we were.
Not that long ago. Orange County, California. Minnerosa 77 is from Chicago. Debbie Bart is from the Mitten State. Zoe is from Florida as well. Jamie, who's I've seen here in the channel before, is from beautiful Pacific Northwest. Jeffrey from Halifax. Now we've had a few people jump in here from Halifax.
Yes, we have.
So it's pretty neat to see some of our East Coasters joining us here. I see Yi from Toronto, not too far away. Susan from Northeast Ohio. Sandy from Lake Tahoe, California. Charles from Texas. Welcome back to the train station, Charles. I love my Pitbull Peaches from Washington, D.C. WRXT512 from Sydney, Australia. Wishing you the best there in Australia. Yes. I know you guys got a little bit of rain today, or maybe yesterday, which was helpful. And it looks like Ilona from Melbourne. Welcome to the train station. I know you guys are having a tough go there in Australia. I don't know how close it is to Melbourne. Puerto Rico, Indianola, Iowa. Interesting. Oklahoma.
Cool.
New York City, and on and on and on. Now, we need to get right down to things.
Yep.
Let's get right down to business here. Let's talk about who we're putting this live stream on for, and talk a little bit about what we're going to cover.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk a little bit about using toys in your training, because we do have a lot of people who are a little bit resistant to using so much food in their training. We do like to use a lot of food in our training initially, like in the beginning stages when we're teaching our dogs something new, and then the intent is to eventually wean off of the food. But there's lots of ways that you can train without solely being restricted to using food. The other thing that is really good to do is have additional types of rewards, so that when your dog is doing a good thing, you could use food, you could use praise, you can use touch, and you can use toys as well, so that there's more variety. And depending on what you're working on, sometimes if we're training our dogs to do something where we want a lot of energy and speed and drive and enthusiasm, we will use toys to kind of enhance that a little bit, because that often will bring things out. But the other thing that we're going to talk about tonight is that, if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, my dog's they don't really like toys, we're going to talk about that as well, because in order to implement toys into your training training more, A, they need to be into toys. B, they need to know how to interact with you with a toy properly, i.e. retrieve the toy or let go of the toy when you want them to.
Totally.
Otherwise, using it doesn't really benefit you much or is very enjoyable. So we're going to try and touch base on a lot of those things tonight.
For sure. For those, when Kayl mentioned that, for those of you who are working with puppies right now, don't miss that video on Sunday.
Yeah.
There's going to be tons of this really great stuff for you and your puppy. But we've also got some great demos tonight. Let's talk about some of the exercises that we really like to use a toy for when we talk about increasing motivation, increasing drive. Like, what are a couple like example exercises that we'd love to use it for?
To build on what you just said, when we're training our dogs right from the beginning, even as baby puppies, we will integrate toys into our training immediately, like right away. One of the very first things that my puppy learns when they come home is how to tug on a toy with me, how to drop the toy. They learn to retrieve, by the time they're 10 or 11 weeks old. So that we can utilize that to exercise the dog and take the edge off a little bit. But one of our absolute favorite games to play with toys and puppies or dogs of all ages is the recall game.
Yeah.
And that is teaching the dogs to come when they're called. But before we're ready to put the dog in a scenario where they're going to be tested in any way, where they might be around distractions and there's like a risk of the dog not coming to us, before we ever put our dog in that scenario, we do tons and tons of recall games where we're setting the dog up to be 100% successful each and every time we call the dog. And typically, we'll actually just start off by using the dog's name, and we won't even use the word come right from the beginning. And one of the games we'll play is Ken will hold the puppy or the dog, and then we'll have a long line or a leash on the puppy so that they're safe if they happen to go astray.
Yep.
I'll stand out in front of the puppy and I'll tease them with the toy and just basically make them crazy as Ken holds them, and the puppy sort of pulling and they can't wait to leave. And then when we see that excitement and that drive building, we shout out their name or we shout out the word come, and then we take off and we run. And there's so many things that are igniting the dog's drive to come towards you. There's crazy, happy, even tense voice that builds the dog's craziness. There's motion, which is really, really important in dog training. Body language, motion. When you run away, it ignites that dog's chase drive and they want to come after you. And then, of course, C or 3. I actually don't know if I was counting or using letters anymore.
Either way, this is the third one.
The third one is using a toy. And typically when we're first starting, we'll use a toy that's really easy for the dog to grab onto. So it's really quickly rewarding. We'll use something soft. We'll use something fuzzy. We'll use something long so that it's easy for the dog to grab. The type of toy that we use is always strategically picked out. We'll talk about that as well. But that's one of my favorite things to do. And if you do, I don't know, 10 repetitions of that, you have a pretty tired dog, which makes for a more easily livable dog at home. And you're building so much drive and value for the dog learning to come to you. Again, whether it's their name or whether it's the response to come or here or whatever, we teach it all of the same way. But it's by far one of my favorite things to do with our dogs.
And I think that some people think, I don't want to have a bubbly, be making loud noises and acting like a complete goofball my whole life with my dog. And we agree, with good information and in the early stages, if you really make sure that your puppy's connected, motivated, and rewarded by you, then you don't have to be so bubbly and perky and always up to get that great motivation. That's where bringing toys into the mix, and we're going to talk in a minute about how to bring toys into the mix so that you're not dependent on like, oh, hey buddy, I've got your favorite little Frisbee thing. So that you don't have to be holding that thing for to get that motivated response. That's one of the important things we're going to talk about tonight. But a question crossed my mind, and I noticed that I forget, someone had mentioned, it might have been Charles, mentioned that his puppy is very toy motivated.
That's great.
Let me know right now in the chat. Do you have a dog that's toy motivated? Do you have a dog that really likes to play with toys, engage with toys, or do you have a dog that's not that interested in them? Because it'll sort of maybe shape a little bit how much we teach on each thing and how we break things down.
I think it's important to say too that lots of dogs will actually start out as a young puppy with quite a lot of toy drive, and it's not uncommon for me to see puppies that are in our puppy class and then I'll see them 2 or 3 grades later and their toy drive is completely gone. And that's because their humans haven't really embellished and really brought out that toy drive. Another really common mistake that 90% of dog owners make, is they give dogs access to what we deem as interactive toys 100% of the time. So if you have squeaky toys, tug toys, toys that are sort of meant for retrieving and playing, if you have those out for your dogs all of the time, you are quickly going to diminish your dog's drive for the toy because it's something that they get all of the time. So at the back of our play area here, I don't know, maybe it's behind Ken's.
What you mean back here? Back in the train station?
Behind Ken's back. There, lean forward.
Oh yeah, there I see it.
Right.
Here, hold on.
Oh my gosh,
hold
it's so hard to do.
There.
That is a lot harder than it looks since it's mirror image.
Especially
Anyways, that is like a big basket that we have, and it is filled with really fun toys. But our dogs actually don't get access to that unless we're out in this area with them. And when we're out there, they can go and grab whatever toy they want out of the basket, but then we play with them with it. So we'll play retrieve, we'll do some training, we'll do some tug and we're out. And then when our little play session together is finished, we remove the toy from the dog and then we put it away. However, our dogs do get access to chew bones, Kongs, things that they can like just go off and chew on their own. They have access to those things all of the time, but we never intend to interact, a lot with those particular items. So we have like play toys and we have chew toys. And to keep the drive of the play toys, our dogs don't get access to them all of the time. We make them a very special item. So when they come out, the dogs are like, oh my God, there's that thing. We never get this. I know good things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And it just makes them way more drivey for the toys. And we find that that's really, really important to do, especially if you start with a dog that has great drive. You certainly don't want to start to get rid of it as time goes on.
So I see a lot of people that say, yes, my dog loves toys.
Good.
Or my dog likes toys. Most of the time, I've seen a couple of interesting points that we're definitely we'll drill down on. If you've been here in the train station before, you'll know what we like to chat with you guys, answer some questions, do a little demo, and then sit back down and answer some of your specific questions about, what we just did. But I only saw a couple of people say their dog wasn't that interested in toys.
Cool.
That's a great tip Kayl gave you to limit your dog's access to the toy. If the toy's always around, it's just not that interesting.
There's something else to say on that too.
Okay, go ahead. Now's a great time.
So for those of you guys out there that have the dogs that are pretty motivated by the toys, I see a couple people say, yeah, my dog likes the toys, but he doesn't really like to give it back or that type of thing. Another thing that we will often do when we're first starting to use interactive toys with our dogs is we either keep the puppy on some type of leash or line, or this is going to sound weird, but we put the toy on a leash or on a line. And the reason why we do that is so that if our puppy's playing with a toy and then all of a sudden they sort of get a bit selfish with it and they want to kind of go off and keep it to themselves, we don't let the puppy do that. So we would get the line and we would reel the toy in like we're reeling in a fish, or we would, encourage the dog to move back over and then we'd grab the toy and we would start to play. So basically the puppy learns you either play with me or you don't get to really play at all.
Right.
But if you don't have the puppy on a leash or you don't have the toy on a leash and your puppy is able to go off into the other room or run to the very back of the yard with the toy in their mouth and play catch me if you can, that is a very dangerous territory to enter, because once they learn that that's fun, it can be a harder thing to break. It absolutely can be something that you can fix, but what we try to do with our dogs is not even let them know that that game even exists in the first place. Every time we're playing, we control it so that it's always positive interaction and it's always something that includes us. So that's a really good tip for you to make sure that you don't end up having a problem. And if you do have a problem, get a leash on that dog, get a leash on that toy, and you'll be well on your way to fixing your issue.
I see a couple of people who were like, oh, that totally makes sense. What a great idea. With no further ado, why don't we head over and talk just for a moment about increasing toy drive for some people, and then we can dive into like how to manage using a toy as a reward. Because, I've waited so long to say the line. I guess it's time to head on over to the train station, 2020 style. Call now.
Hello?
See, that's what happens.
Is it better?
So what happens when we take a break from the train station? Luckily,
Do I need to start again?
Yeah, you do.
Okay. So I'm going to use Hippie. We chose to use her because she is a dog that we've actually had to work on building a lot of toy drive. And when I have a couple different toy items here. Oh, Hippie Shaker. I have a Frisbee. I have a little treat ball, which I'll talk about in a second. I have a little raccoon tail, and I have a little like holy roller ball. And the reason why I'm showing you all these examples is dogs often will gravitate to different types of toys. And one toy that your last dog really loved doesn't necessarily mean that this dog is really going to love it. So you need to kind of play around. Another thing that's important to know about dogs is that they are really into different textures. So some dogs, like I have a dog that she loves rubber latex toys like this. Hippie Shake is not really going to be that into this, and I'll show you that in a second. But then if I switch to like this tail, or if I switch to the treat ball, you're going to see an entirely different response from her. Okay, Hip, come here for a sec, babe. So I'm just going to try this this rubbery thing first. What's this? Oh, hold on. There is a very exciting toy right here, which you are not having. Come here. Okay, look at this. Good. So I'm going to move it around a little bit so you can see she's like, I'm not really that into it. So I'm going to try something else. What about a Frisbee? Oh, sad. Good girl. So she's a little bit. Oh, what have you got? Good girl, good girl. So see how, in order to get her excited about this, come here for a second, I'm keeping the toy lively. What a lot of people make the mistake of is they want their dog to play with the toy. They take the toy and they wiggle it in the dog's face like this. Can you imagine somebody took something and like sort of waving it in your face? I would want to smack them. I would not like that at all. So what I'm trying to do is ignite her chase drive. So I'm going to take the toy and I'm going to wiggle it all around so that she wants to chase it. Here, tuck, tuck, tuck. Good girl, I'm going to flip it away. Get that toy, get that toy. Where's that tuck? Where's that tuck? Ready? Get it. Where's that tuck? Where's that tuck? Oh, Zach, get it. Get that. Yeah, ready? Get it. Yay! Good girl. Ready? Get it. Yay! Good girl. So see how I make a big deal when she puts, yo, good girl. Get that thing. Get that thing. Get it. So she's kind of into this, but she's actually more excited. Oh, hi. She's actually more excited about playing with me right now than she is the actual dog. Oh, yay. Good girl. There we go. So I'm purposely trying to over-reward or over-praise her with my voice when I see that she's in contact with the toy. And if you are not huffing and puffing and sweating after doing this with your dog, especially if they're not that into it, then you're not doing it well enough. So I'm going to show you my last, my last little game changer here. This toy is something specifically that we use for dogs that may be lacking a little bit of toy drive. So it is called a treat ball, and there's a little hole, little pocket in the inside that you can put food in, and then you can close it with Velcro. And this makes it really, really exciting, and this is a great way to sort of get your dog excited. Now, she might actually pick it up because I've worked a lot with it with her before, but I might even start by just yesing and rewarding when the dog sniffs the ball, and I will open it up and get some food. I'm just going to pack some food in it for a second here.
Tons of great questions coming in here on the channel. If you have a question about increasing the toy drive for your food motivated dog, now would be a great time to ask.
Okay, so I have a little pocket here. I have several treats here. Hip, look at this. Hippie, I have it. Oh, I have it. So I'm going to take the food, I'm going to put it right inside this little treat ball here. Good. Oh, I'm going to show it to her. Then I'm going to close it up. Oh, Hippie Shaker. Then I'm going to move it around a little bit. Oh, good. So she's interested, so I'm going to give it a little toss. Get it. Yay! So she's sniffing it. She's rolling it. Get that thing. Get it. Ready, set. Get it. Yes, good. So she picked it up. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to open it up. And then I'm going to let her dive her head in there and grab all those treats. Good girl. So she learns that using her nose and using her mouth with this toy earns her reward. I'm going to try it again. Oh, I'm going to make her crazy. Good. Ready. Get it. Yay! Good girl. So she grabbed it. She brought it back in my direction. Again, I'm going to rip it open. Get that thing. Yeah. Good girl. Okay, we're gonna do one more. So here's the food. Put it back in the little treat ball. What's this? Get it. So see how I'm teasing her with it? Get it. Yay! Bring that here. Bring that here. Yeah, bring. Get that thing. Bring. Yay! That was a good one. Good girl. Now Hippie's been trained to do some retrieving already. She knows what bring means. Because we've done a lot of work on it. If your dog isn't as familiar with that behavior, then I would be doing this on a leash like I had mentioned before. So if she had gone out to get the toy and then she decided to go elsewhere with it, I could use the leash to bring her back in my direction so she couldn't just linger away from me and keep the reward to herself. The other thing that's really important, again, dealing with dogs who aren't that drivey about the toy. That's what we're talking about right now. I will also talk about dogs who are crazy about toys, but for dogs who are not that drivey, I just did 3 or 4 fun little things. She did a great job. Now I'm going to stop. There is absolutely such thing as overdoing it. So playing for so long that the dog basically says, all right, I'm over it. And then if they are the one that quits, that tells you have practiced too long. I want to leave her wanting more. So I'm actually going to be really mean here, but it's also a really good technique. And I'm just going to kind of tease her. What's this? You want that? Oh, you want that? I'm going to put it away. Good girl. And then I'm going to put her away. So basically, she got to play. I teased her with the toy. Now the toy's done. I would put her away, and then I might bring her back out, do a couple little minutes with that toy once again. And every time I bring her out, she's going to start to say, ooh, I know what happens when you grab that blue ball. Fun things happen. So I do short little periods of intense training, exciting things, and then I put a little cork on it for a while until we're ready to play once again. Good girl.
Awesome. So why don't maybe we can talk a little bit about, I'll bring you guys back over here. Maybe we can talk a little bit now. Like I think now, if you have a not or super toy motivated dog, make sure I would go back, rewatch that section when the replay's up and available, because there were a lot of things happening there that Kayl just sort of did that are going to be really helpful for you.
I should say too that if you don't have something like a treat ball specifically, there you have all kinds of toys out in the market that combine food and toy, but that toy wasn't really around very much when we first started training with Hippie. So what I used to do a lot is I just went to the dollar store and I bought a pencil case that was really soft. It was sort of material and it was fuzzy and something like a little kid would love to have. And I put chicken wieners and cheese and all kinds of really fun stuff in that. And then I just zipped it closed. And I would just sort of wiggle it around in front of her. And she was very interested in it because it smelled like chicken wieners and cheese. And every time she was investigating it and she was she wasn't even biting it. She was just showing a lot of interest in it. I would say yes. I would open the zipper and I would give her some food. And we sort of worked until she got to the point where she was like, I know there's food in there. And then she would start to grab onto the pencil case with her mouth. And basically I was shaping and training her to understand how to get the food. And eventually she figured out that when she put her mouth on the pencil case, or she would go and pick the pencil case up and bring it back to me, I would unzip it and then I would feed her. And then that led into changing from the pencil case full of treats to maybe a sock with a chicken wiener in it, or a tug toy, or it just sort of expanded from there. But we started off really, really easy. You don't have to get a big fancy toy to train this. A sock, a pencil case, and some really high value treats can be your starting point if you want to.
Yeah, no, I saw a few people asking, where do I get that toy? And I couldn't get any away from our physical store to offer in our online store just yet. We have them, but
we don't have enough of them.
We don't have enough of them. So, but I did put a link in the description. If you go down maybe 4 or 5, because I knew there'd be people that would ask, an Amazon affiliate link. So we'll get a small percentage of the sale. I should be pretty transparent about that, but it is for the Kong Ballistic. So if you find it at your local pet store, it's a great tool if you have a dog who's food motivated and you want to teach them to be a little bit more toy motivated. And if you're not sure,
just start off with something that's easier. And then if your dog's kind of into that, then go for the treat ball. The reason why I like the treat ball is that it rolls. And for a lot of dogs, that movement of the toy is a lot more enticing than a toy that goes and sort of lays flat and stops moving. Dogs like things that they can chase after, which is why I do like the idea of the treat ball. Just to put that out there.
Oh, look at my hair. I am camera ready today. Wow. I'm really sticking.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, you should have. Okay, we have lots of people in the chat who are dogs are crazy about toys. Okay. Now let's figure out how we can take advantage of that toy drive and incorporate it into their dog training.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? I love doing this. Kayla and I, when we have a puppy in the house, we do so many fun exercises and really figure out what toys the dog would like.
We have a competition to see who can get the dog to tug with the toy the hardest, and Ken always wins.
Yeah, I do.
It's irritating.
I'm an excellent tug teacher.
You are a good tug teacher.
But I really think that it comes, using toys as well as food in your training has a lot of benefit. Let's jump into a demo for like something like impulse control, which is something I've seen lots of people saying, like, oh, my dog just bites too much, or they bite too close to my hands. I see lots of that kind of thing from you guys that have toy motivated dogs. We can show you some things that you can do to address that and how to use your toys in training.
Yeah, so before I get started, and the first exercise I'm going to show you is just a simple tug and release game that we do, and this is where we start before we start to implement the toy into some of our other training exercises. So when you do this, you need to have some type of toy that your dog likes to play with, and then you need some type of reward that your dog likes more than what they're tugging on. So it could be a treat. So I have some treats in my pocket, or for some dogs it could even be another toy, but they either need to be equal or more value that we're teaching our dog to trade for. So basically we're going to work a bit of a trading system. If you give me the toy, I will give you something better in return, and we'll continue that process until my dog understands that if I want the toy back from them, they're more than happy to give it up, because I've made it a very valuable thing to do so, which is easier to talk to you about that now than it is to show you when I'm up there.
So it also gives me an opportunity to toot. Who's the Beeline is our little demo dog, and I can't wait to send you guys over. Let's see what Kayl's up to. Let's head on over to the train station.
Pick one. Oh, you want a treat ball? We've already used that. Let's use something else. What about this? Oh, frizzy. Oh, good girl. Okay. So when I'm working on this type of thing, I'm going to start off by just using a little bit of a tugging play game just to get my dog interested. And again, this is something that your dog might do very easily, especially if they're very drivey on the toy. But what I want to do is make sure that if I want the toy back from her, that she understands to be able to do that right away. So I have some treats hidden in my pocket, and in a moment, I'm going to give her a command that says, I want you to give me the toy back. For me, I use the command out. You can say whatever you want, but that's my command is out. She needs to let go of the toy. Get it. When I say the command out, and I am teaching her to do this exercise, okay, hold on a second, sit. It's very hard to teach when you're tugging on my arm. When I teach this word to her, I need to make sure that I stop engaging her in play. And this is a common mistake people make. They say out, and they pull on the toy, and the dog says, but you're still playing. I'm not going to drop it. So when I give her the command, I'm going to make the toy very still and very boring. And when I do that, I'm going to take the food in my pocket, and I'm going to put it right on Beeline's nose. And when she smells it, she's going to release the toy, and then we can have a little reward game from there using the food. And then we'll start the exercise again. So here's what it looks like. Ready, set, get it. Yes, good girl. So I'm going to start to play with her, have some fun. I'm going to sneak a couple pieces of food in my hand. So I have food in this hand. Good girl. And then when I want to teach her the OUT command, I'm going to say the command and then trade her. But again, you'll see that I stop playing. Out. Yes. Good. Out. Now, I pull a little fast one. You'll notice that I've tucked my toy behind my back, and that's to ensure that B doesn't go directly from the toy and then snatch back on to the toy once again. When we play these games with our dogs, we want them to learn that we begin and end the game. Now, I'm going to put a collar and leash on my dog here so that I can show you how you're going to deal with a dog if they're really unruly and crazy. Come here, young lady. Now, if I'm working with a dog that's really kind of nuts about the toy, I'm going to start off by just working a bit of impulse control. So I can have the leash in my hand, or I can just stand on the leash close enough that if she decides to jump up and grab the toy, she's going to be unsuccessful. And I'm just going to start off by just moving the toy in front of her nose. Good girl, yes. If she was to jump up on top of me now, I could either have her just self-correct herself because she would hit the leash, or I could just reach down and use the leash and get her into a sit. What I want to do is get to the point where I can shake this toy around in front of her and she won't grab it. Now, she's been trained to do this already, so she understands not to grab it, but that's because each time she did grab it when she was younger, I would just address that, have her calm, and then I would release her. Then I'm going to get her excited. Ready, set, get it. Yay! When I say those magic words, she can jump onto that toy and have a total ball. I can tug and play, make it exciting. Good girl. I'm going to get my treat out, and I'm going to try another drop-in exercise. So I'm going to say out. Yes. Good girly. I'm going to say out, and then I'm going to reward her. Good girl. Sit. Yes. Now, one thing you need to know about dog training is that dogs learn within 1 second. And although I did that very quickly, I want you to make sure that you understand how you're going to do this and with proper timing with your dog when you're practicing. If you're going to use the trade system, one extremely important point is that you need to make sure that you say the command first before you show them what you're going to trade them for. And why this is crucial is we have a lot of dogs that won't listen until they see what you're going to trade them for. And earlier at the stream, we talked about what we don't want you to have to do is say, here's the toy, please listen to me and you'll get this. That's called bribery. That's a dog that has you trained rather than the other way around, because they basically say, I'm not going to listen until I see that you have a toy or I see that you have a treat. So to avoid that from happening, what you're going to do is you're going to give your verbal command first, then you're going to follow through with whatever you're going to trade for. And by having that process repeated, here's the command, here's the reward, here's the command, here's the reward. Very smart dogs, any dog really, will start to anticipate hearing the word and know that that reward is coming. So they start actually listening to the command even before the reward, the toy, the food is even presented to them. And that's how you're going to teach your dog to drop on command. So say I practiced a couple repetitions like what I just showed. My next progression is going to be this. So I have the food ready in my pocket. I'm going to tell her, get it, yay. I'm going to have some fun, get it. I'm going to tug with her. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say O-U-T, and I'm going to ask her to drop it. And if she does, I'm going to say yes. Then I'm going to reach into my pocket and reward her. So she has to do the behavior now before she gets the reward. Out. Yes, good girl. So when I said out, I didn't have the food out. I had it in my pocket. She was a super good girl. Yes, and I can reward. Now, if you have a highly motivated dog by toys, you can do this even without food. You could trade for another toy, or sometimes what I'll do is the reward for releasing is the fact that she gets to play again. So I'm going to show you what we often do together. She likes food and she likes toys equally, but I make this a bit more of a bigger deal. Are you ready? Set, get it. Yay! Good girl. Get it. Out. Yes, get it. Yay! Get it. Oh, you got it. Yeah. Get it. Give me that thing. Good girl. Out. Get it. Yes, good girl. Out. Get it. Yay, good girl. Perfect. Get that thing. Good girl. Out. Yes. So it starts to actually, she drops it faster and faster because she knows a game is coming. Once this step is established, now I can do all kinds of things, incorporating my toy to work on my control. There's a lot of people out there that says, well, I don't want to use toys and make my dog go crazy like that, because then she's just going to learn to be wild and jumping all over the place and grabbing things all the time. But you'll notice Bee's not jumping up and grabbing at me at all, because she's learning through an act that is exciting that she also has to show some impulse control at the same time. I can teach her to be a wild and crazy girl because that's something that she loves to do, but it's all under my control. We don't want to be like a big drill sergeant with the dog and not let her have any fun. I want her to have a blast, but I also want her to listen to me. And so this is a great way to positively teach her that I'm in charge, that I'm a good leader, that she has to listen to me, but we're doing it in games that build a lot of drive and build a lot of value for doing things for me. And she says, I could do this all day, Mom. It's a lot of fun. Do you want me to show the sit and the down and stuff?
Olivia says, how do you teach the get it command? Like, how does Bea understand that she's only allowed to get it when you say get it?
Okay, good question. So when I say get it, so if you have a dog where you say get it and the dog doesn't go after, good, you're right. Yeah, that was very mean. If you say get it and you show the toy and your dog doesn't immediately go after it, it probably means that you're not either using a toy that's exciting enough for your dog, or you need to make the toy a little bit more exciting in itself. So when I practice there, if I just say get it, she knows it well enough that if the toy's even just being still, she's happy to grab it. When I was doing it with Hippie Shake, who does not have the same toy drive as this dog does, I would say, get it, and I would wiggle it this way, get it, get it, wiggle it this way, wiggle it this way, yeah! And when she grabs onto it, then I can yes and reward. So I actually make it really exciting to almost chase it for a little bit as I'm using that get it command. Out, good Freddy, get it, 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 yeah, good girl. Moving it all around fast and exciting, and then again when she grabs it, I can reward from there. But you have to use a toy that's really exciting. Out.
So the other thing is when you're using a toy in your training, if you're using a toy for training, it's only going to be used. It's going to be a special toy.
Yes.
I know you mentioned that really quickly at the beginning, but that's something to really drive home.
Yeah. So I do a lot of different training with my dogs. So I actually have toys because I do a lot of high-level agility training with my dogs. And I have toys that I only ever use for agility, so they do not see it any other time. I also, for some of my dogs who I've had to really build motivation and confidence with, they have toys that I use in training, and they have extra special things that they only get at competitions. And so what this does is it teaches the dog to feel a certain way when they get the toy. So if she's really excited about this, we had a great game. Again, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't just leave it on the floor in the living room and walk away and just let her continue playing with it on her own. She gets to play this when it's energetic between the two of us. So now I might take it and I might put it up on a counter or up on something where she can see it, but she can't have it. So I'm building her drive. I'm getting her really excited about it. Oh, it's gone now. What are we going to do? Oh, good girl. And then we can go on to something else.
You talked a little bit about if you're going to exchange a toy for another toy.
Yes, I can show that if you'd like.
Well, you did show that, but how would someone use that in like their recall training? You said, I don't want it to be all about the toy, or some other motion activity.
Yeah.
Even response to name.
Yeah. So when I'm practicing it, so again, let me use a different toy. I'll just switch it up a little bit. What about this one? Oh, that's a fun one. This one has a bungee on it so that your arm doesn't get ripped out of your socket. So when I'm first teaching this, so if I'm working with a dog that doesn't have a good solid understanding of their name, or if I'm working with a dog that doesn't have a solid understanding of the come command, I would use the toy as a lure and a bribe so that the dog's very likely to do it correctly. So for example, if I want to teach her to come on her name or whatever, I might hold her out and I might shake the toy. Ready? B. Yeah, good girl. I'm going to call her name and then I'm going to let go of her and let her drive to the toy. We're going to do our little play exercise. Out. And then I can try it again. Again, I need to tug in the out before I can do this exercise. Otherwise, it's too difficult. So try it again. Ready, set, B. Yes, good girl. So I'm building drive for her name. You'll notice that I'm saying her name. I'm sort of sound enthusiastic when I say her name. I'm using the toy, but I'm also using motion. You'll notice that when I said her name, I quickly shot backwards. That ignites the dog's chase drive. She's much more likely to want to come towards me when I do that. People often make the mistake of running towards the dog and catching them or grabbing them as they come by. And that, a lot of dogs don't like that, so they're going to avoid you. They're going to stay at a distance. Now, once she can do that, I can then, and she has a lot of value for turning to her name, the next thing that I can do is use the toy more as a reward rather than a bribe. So I can take the toy out, good girl, and I might shove it up the back of my sweatshirt. Now it's gone, and then I can just sort of wait for her to get a little distracted. Call her over, sweetie. B. Yay! Good girl. So I called her name. She responded. Once I got a response, I pulled the toy out, and I used it as a reward. What I don't want to do is, okay, call her again, hon.
B. Hey, buddy. Hey.
I don't want to do this. B. Yes. So I called her and I shook the toy, and so she's only coming to me because I'm shaking the toy. Now, I maybe start that way to teach her, but if I continue to do it in that order, I'm going to have a dog that looks at me and says, okay, lady, pull the toy out, and then I'll decide whether I'm going to come to you or not. And if you want to do something even more advanced, make your dog work more for the toy before you pull it out. Okay, out. So call her again, hon. Just get her away.
Hey, buddy.
B. Sit. Good girl. Look. Oh, that's good. Good. I'm going to get the toy out. Ready? Get it! Yay! So I can build to getting more focus and more behaviors from my dog before she gets to get the toy and have a play. But she's not stupid. She knows I have the reward, but she's also learning to work for me before she gets the reward from there. So it's a great way to build into it. Is this the most fun demo or what? Good girl.
Okay, let's head over and let's answer some of these questions. I see some really great questions in here, and then we'll maybe show people how they can use a toy for reward, even when it's not on them.
Okay. Yeah. Out. You are so good.
Dropping knowledge. Kayl's dropping knowledge and so much good information. I so often wish that all of our students, like our in-class students, could see all of these demos, because there's so many like little things that are happening that you guys are learning about. It just make like the big picture training so much easier when you're like working on a specific skill, when you understand some of the value of reward stuff, some of the little tweaks, it makes your life a lot easier.
You do get a lot more hot and sweaty when you train with the toy than you do food.
It's a great workout.
But it's fun.
Yeah. Susan May asked a good question. She said, so when you leave the toy up where they can see it, do you have trouble with them standing there barking at the toy?
So when you have the toy up and they can see it, no. You might start off with, but again, that's a behavior that I would work through. So what you need to remember about dogs is you need to train them about how you expect them to behave in all scenarios. So what happens is if you are worried about them standing there and demand barking for the toy, and then you say to yourself, okay, well, I'm not going to put the toy up there yet, your dog's dictating how, your life choices are going to be made. I would then, address the barking then. If the dog was looking at the toy, I might take the leash that should be attached to the unruly dog in the house, and I would redirect them and say, hey, quiet, leave it. And I would redirect them with the leash, and I would give them something else to do to, teach them what they should be doing in that scenario. I might redirect them to a chew bone, or I might have them go and lay on their bed, or I might take them into another room, or put them in their crate for a minute or two, whatever it might be. So I would work through that. And then, of course, if my dog was barking, I wouldn't get the toy out and start playing and be like, oh, my dog wants to play. I want to stay in charge of making those decisions, and I don't want to be accidentally reinforcing the dog for a behavior that I truly don't really want.
A good question here, and I think this is important that we touch on this right now. K-Back says, this is perfect timing. I have a new puppy who wants to chew on her leash. I wasn't sure how to get her to stop. Now, this isn't your puppy chewing on their leash. This isn't necessarily a scenario where you're going to say out and then food reward.
No.
Because it's a bit of a nuisance behavior. Maybe we can talk about that just a little.
I'm going to get a leash.
There's a little bit of a tweak for this, because what you may discover, especially if you have a sharp little puppy, is that your puppy figures out, oh, this is great. Every time I do something that he doesn't like or she doesn't like, I get food rewarded. So you've got to be really careful about differentiating, engagement with a toy that you are choosing, dictating the beginning and ending, and some of these nuisance behaviors. So
that also goes from like dogs chewing on your clothing or chewing on you. Anything that really is not appropriate, we're not going to trade them for a reward, because it is exactly what Ken's saying. A lot of dogs will say, oh, well, when I chew on your clothing, you pull out a toy or you pull out a treat, so I'm going to chew on your clothing even more. So when it's a nuisance behavior, as he's mentioning, we want to redirect the dog rather than show them a different direction. Well, let me just explain. So if Ken is my dog and he's biting the leash, okay?
I'm not going to bite the leash.
No, you're not going to bite the leash. Say he had the leash in his mouth and he was tugging on it. What I would do is I would stop him by shortening up on the leash. I would take it out of his mouth, and then I would just lift up and tell him, knock it off, settle. And when I hold the leash, and this is sort of a silly demo because it's very small. But please use your imagination for us. When you hold the leash, this is going to be very technical, but bear with me. You want to hold the leash so that your leash is like this, gathered over your thumb. You're going to hold it into a fist. And the reason why we do this is it gives you the most control that you can have with a dog of any size. It doesn't matter whether you're working with a 10-pound dog or a 100-pound dog. We have you hold the leash the same way. My other hand that's not on the leash is just going to grab the leash underneath. And if any of you are baseball players out there, it's just the same way that you would hold on to a baseball bat. Why we do this is that I can lift up on the leash and I can get a lot more of leverage and control control. I can move my hands in different directions to avoid the dog jumping up and grabbing me. And then once the dog's settled, it's imperative that we put slack back in the leash and give our dogs a second just to sort of relax so that I can praise and reward my dog. So again, if he goes to bite the leash, I'm going to take the leash out of his mouth and say, leave it, lift up on the leash. When he sort of says, okay, I didn't mean to do that, then I'm going to loosen the leash. Good boy, good, leave it. And then I can redirect my dog from there. Now, a lot of puppies, though, is you're going to do that and they're going to say, you can't be serious. And they're going to grab the leash more and you're going to lift up and it's going to feel like a bit of a tug of war and you're going to say, Kayl didn't explain this that was going to happen. So I will tell you, sometimes it's not something that ends very quickly. Sometimes you have to lift up several times or move the leash in a couple different directions or place the dog into a sit to really make sure that you do get the last say. And then from there, you can redirect them to something else. But that goes back to like the importance of having a leash. Because again, same thing. A lot of people say, well, I can't have the leash on the dog in the house because he'll bite the leash, he'll chew the leash, he'll just play with it. Then we have a dog that's not leashed. We have a dog that's making all kinds of poor choices and isn't properly being addressed for it. So we don't want you avoiding problems because your dog's being unruly with a leash or they're barking and jumping up at the toy.
Right.
You need to address those things before you expect your other problems to be fixed.
Yeah, and for those of you who have a super toy motivated dog, and this is a question we often get on the channel, is like, what if my dog's constantly bringing me the toy, like insisting that I play with the toy?
Yeah.
That's a very, very common thing. And you have to make sure that your dog isn't dictating. Whatever you do, you can't start the game. You can't start playing with them at that point. You know, if you're distracted and you're doing something and your dog's insisting that you get attention, whether it's barking or bringing toys or nudging you with their hand or whatever, and you just don't have the time, you can't invest in your dog, then it's really important that you give them maybe they go lay on their bed. Maybe they go into their crate for a little bit to hang out until you're ready to focus on them, engage with them. But you have to be really careful that they're not bringing you over a ball and dropping it on your lap when you're in the middle of, doing work or something like that. You really need to be a great leader here. Mm-hmm. And when your dog has gone and laid on their bed for a little bit and now you've got a little time, now you can go out and have a big game of tug or a big game of catch or something that you are starting and ending on your terms. It's really important. Mm-hmm. Some other great questions in here. Some good questions from these guys. I think we talked about that a little bit. Let's see. From Jamie Ucida, Frank is almost 2. He has huge toy drive. We're working on out or he won't give them back. Jellybean, 4 months, tugs and fetches, but let's go. But Frank is challenging. So one thing that you can do with a dog that's got super high toy drive when you're playing tug with him and working on your out, a couple things. Either think about, do I have a higher value trade? Is something better for this dog as a trade? If not, then you might need to lower the value of the toy that you're starting with.
Yeah.
The other thing is your dog, when you're training dogs, especially when you're toy training dogs and playing tug or whatever the engaging activity is, they just get higher and higher. You see it. They get higher, and that's what you want for some dogs, for most dogs. You want them to get more and more excited. It's more fun because they're with you and they're doing something with you. But if you have a dog that's not letting go of the toy, you need to shorten the amount of time that you're actually engaging, that you're actually tugging, because you want them in a working mindset. You don't want them in that super stimulated, loving toys, can't think of anything else mindset. You need to tug until you're there and then work on your out. Don't tug for too long. Shorten that play session. Make sure that you get a faster and a more reliable out.
And we can't emphasize enough that when you're training your dog to do anything, you need to have some type of leash or line on the dog. Yeah. We see so many people that try to work with toys or play fetch or do all those things before their dog really is truly well trained, and they do it off leash, and then basically you're just raising the risk of your dog making poor choices and not doing it correctly. Our style of dog training is all about setting the dog up to do it right, and if there is a possibility of the dog doing wrong, we predict that so that we're ready for it and ready to deal with it when it happens. What we don't want to do is allow the dog to rehearse doing things incorrectly over and over and over. Dogs learn through repetition, so whether your dog is repeating something correctly or incorrectly, they are learning. And so many times people just allow their dogs to make such poor choices, and that happens for months and weeks and long periods of time. And then the dog says, well, you've let me do this for 6 months or a year, and why all of a sudden has the rules changed? So it is really important that you're setting your dog up to make good choices. And one of the easiest ways to control that is by having them on some type of leash or line so you can follow through if you need to.
Yeah, I really, we can hear the dogs are playing just offset here. Here's a great question, and it sort of talks a little bit about that chewing on the leash. It can also be when we talk about maybe your dog playing with a toy when you don't want them to, you know, when they're insisting on playing with a toy. But I love this question, and it's so it's a new level of thinking that you need to understand when we talk about redirection. Tara asks a great question here. How do you actually redirect a dog to do something else after chewing on furniture? And we'll take this specific event, but we're going to generalize it a little bit and redirect them to another toy. Isn't that a reward? Such a great question, Tara, and I really like how you're thinking. So let's talk about the steps when we are redirecting, whether it's chewing on furniture. Okay, let's talk specifically about chewing on furniture. The steps that we would take.
So what I would do if I noticed that my dog was chewing on the furniture is, first of all, you need to make sure you catch them in the act of doing it. So if notice that there's a couple bite marks missing out of your couch or your dining room table and you didn't actually see that your dog did it, unfortunately you can't address it at that time. So you can only address dogs if incorrect behavior is happening in the moment that you see it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when I see my dog making a poor choice so that I can have really great timing, I'm going to first use a voice command to let the dog know, I don't like what you're doing. I could give a command or a hey or a leave it.
Something
or
abrupt.
And something sharp and surprising. Yeah. And then my dog basically has two choices. When they hear that, if our dogs are not perfect, they're dogs. They make mistakes all of the time. But the difference between our dogs who are trained is when they make a mistake, all we have to do is give them a quick little voice correction or, hey, what are you doing? And the behavior just stops right then and there. But that was not always the case. When they were babies, when they were puppies, we would have to use our voice and the dog would say, what is this knock it off thing that you talk about? Whatever, I don't care. I'm having a ball, ripping apart your boot or chewing on your couch. So from there, we would move over to the dog. We would repeat that voice command that we gave prior, and then we would follow it with some type of follow through. And in most cases, we would pick up the leash and redirect the puppy away firmly, but not unfairly. Okay, I'm not going to be soft and gentle and say, no, puppy, don't do that, and start petting the dog. I know you like that. Nice. Okay, I'm going to take the leash and I'm going to very quickly leave it, and I'm going to pull the dog away.
Clearly.
With, a firm tone, firm use of the leash. And so I want the puppy to sort of say, whoa, I didn't really mean to do that. Once I get that reaction from the puppy, I then need to, so now the puppy says, okay, mom didn't like me doing that. I now need to be fair and then say, okay, I didn't like that. I'm not just going to drop the leash and walk away and be like, all right, I'm mad and leave it at that.
Right.
I need to use this as a learning opportunity. So I might say, leave it. Puppy sort of says, okay, mom, sorry. I might see softer eyes, ear back, something from the puppy's body language that says, I now I get I wasn't supposed to do that. And then I'm going to say, okay, do this instead. And I might ask them for a different behavior. I might redirect them to their chew bone or whatever it might be. And you had asked, don't they perceive that as a reward? Where they will perceive their bad behavior as earning a reward is if there's no, for lack of a better word, correction in between. So if I just pull the puppy away softly and I don't really scold the puppy and I just say, no, don't touch this, have this, that is where I would teach my dog that chewing on a boot equals being able to get a bone. What I need to do is make chewing on the boot not exciting, not fun, by moving the puppy away more firmly with the leash so the puppy says, oh, that wasn't really that fun. And then say, what is fun? Chewing on this bone or doing a sit or giving me a shake a paw. And then I get the dog working and bubbly and excited and motivated again. And then we can move on. So we always have to end the conversation with our dogs in a very positive manner. That's really, really important.
Yeah, and if you feel like the only reason your dog isn't chewing on the furniture and isn't chewing on the thing is because you're trading them quickly for something, that's you're not doing it right. There needs to be some sort of interruption, break the behavior. The dog chooses to leave the thing alone and says, oh, geez, I'm sorry. I didn't even know. Then you can engage with them and give them a reward. Great question, though. Who was that, Anna or Tara? Tara, good question, Tara.
Really good question.
Yeah. Let's see. We asked Susan's question. So, Karen G.S.D. Lover, good evening. Do you think it's best to not leave toys out for dogs to access at free will? Yeah,
Absolutely.
We did talk a little bit about that earlier. And your dog can have 2 toys out, but the toys that you're going to use for training and as a high value reward, make sure that you keep them special for those events when you're training. Claire says, my pooch loves toys at home, but when we're out walking, he's not interested at all, even his faves. So what sort of advice might you have? Like what sort of things go into when you're thinking about toy training as a reward? I mean, maybe there's too much distraction. Maybe your dog maybe it's worried. Maybe the situation is just not, the toy isn't high value enough in that situation. And that's why we love using sometimes toy versus food. Sometimes there's a better situation. Maybe your dog doesn't really want cheese in whatever the setting is, but they'll definitely take a tug toy, or they'll play, a quick game of fetch. You really do need to use different rewards at the right time. And for each dog, it might be a little bit different.
What I've learned about toy work with dogs is that in order for your dog to want to interact with the toy, they either need to feel totally relaxed in their environment so that they can feel safe enough to tug. With a dog like Hippie Shake, who's a toy poodle, she knows that in life she is prey. When she's around bigger dogs, she understands that she's at risk. She's a small dog. She understands that. So if I was to take her to a park with a bunch of other dogs, even though she can tug on the toy pretty well, she would not tug in those scenarios, because she would say, I know when I get excited, dogs are going to be stimulated by me and they're going to want to chase me. She's smart. She gets that already. I'm also smart, and I would never put her in that scenario. So if your dog doesn't feel safe or relaxed, they might not want to tug on the toy. Some dogs, though, are just so overstimulated in their scenario that they can't turn to the toy. So say, for example, like I have a border collie that initially when she was younger, she was really motivated to chase cars. When I would walk her around the property, cars would go past and her eyes would bulge out of her head and she would want to chase after the cars. And the toy, I could dangle a toy in front of her face and she'd be like, no way, I want to chase the car. So in order to get success, I had to get her far enough from the road that the toy then became higher value than the car. And Ken actually made a great video a few months ago about how rewards and distractions are like magnets, and about you can kind of learn what your dog's threshold is. So if I'm 10 feet or 20 feet from a car, and the reward or the incentive that I'm trying to use to redirect my dog is not powerful enough, the only thing I can really control at that point is the distance between me and the distraction. So I would need to move myself to a threshold that was achievable, get success, build a lot of drive for whatever I'm working on, and then slowly work my way up to being able to be closer to that distraction. And that dog saying, you know what, I like playing with you, I like tugging on the toy, I like eating that food, whatever it is, and I now can do this beside that distraction. But think of distractions like rate them. You don't want to go to a level 10 right away and expect your dog to be perfect. It just doesn't work that way. You need to ease your way into it.
Yeah, and Kayl talking about that video, and I don't know whether Dan is with us right now, but Change the Way You Look at Loose Leash Walking was the video where I talked about being a little bit more magnetic and how you can really change your training by starting off on the right foot and getting more attention off the bat, rather than struggling with all the things you don't want your dog to do, being the reason, giving them a reason to pay more attention to you. I wanted to answer this really quickly from Susan Robinson. Susan's been pretty busy in the chat, but she's a little bit confused. So if your puppy is biting you incessantly, you don't want to redirect to an acceptable chew thing like a bone, what do you do? You may have sort of missed part of the equation there. So interrupting the behavior, we have a great video on nipping, and we actually use food as a reward when the puppy chooses to not bite. But interrupting that behavior first, making sure, if you do stop that action or that behavior or that thing, in this case, it's biting abruptly and sharply and enough that the puppy says, okay, this isn't the right thing. Then acknowledge the moment that they make a great choice. Then they can get a chew bone. Giving them something to chew on is a great choice rather than deciding to chew on you. Remember, these tiny little events like nipping and biting, you can address them in the moment. But you want to set your dog up to be successful by doing stuff like training them, playing with them, tiring them out, doing all sorts of activities with them so that they're not, that sort of elevated state of mind. We talked a little bit about that earlier. But redirecting your dog specifically for nipping, address the behavior. Address the behavior first. When you see your dog be like, oh, okay, well, that's not the right thing. Then you can offer them something else to do. But you do need to address it in the moment. So using a bone after the fact is a great idea.
Yeah.
But not as, not that. Make sure that's not the only reason they're not nipping you.
Yeah, Susan, our moderator Dan just posted a video on puppy nipping and biting playlist where we have all kinds of videos specifically on that topic. So hopefully you'll find something there that will help you out.
We need to talk really quickly about jackpot rewarding, how you might use that in training, because I've seen a few people saying, like, I leave a special toy in the car, or and this is something you'll do for agility.
Yep.
But using toys in training doesn't specifically mean you have to have a toy in your pocket or a toy tucked into your waistband. There's something else you can do that we use quite a lot for transitioning away from having rewards on us. Who do you want to show that really quickly?
I'll use B because she's the easiest to get.
She's also really, really cute. But jackpot rewarding is something that we talk about a little bit when we're talking about food reward. But when it comes to toy, you have to do things a little bit differently. And I think Kayl's going to give us a great demo here. I turned the light off. With no further ado, why don't we head on over to the train station?
Okay, so I'm going to keep switching up the toys here, making it a little bit interesting. So I have a little raccoon tails now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this raccoon tail and I'm just going to actually put it off to the side on this crate. And I'm just going to encourage her, here, Bee. I'm just going to have her come out here. We're just going to start off, with a couple stationary exercises. So there's the toy there. I'm going to just ask her to do a behavior. Down. Yes. Okay, get it. Good girl. And I can say yes. I can grab the toy, have a little tug. Out. Good girl. Now I might ask her for 2 behaviors. Sit. Good girl. Down. Yes. Okay, get it. Yay. Then we might go for 3 behaviors. Out. Ready. Left. Good girl. Back, 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 back. Tap. Tap. Okay, yay, get it, good girl. So she's learning that if she does a few behaviors, I'll get the toy out and have some fun. Out, good girl. I'll put the toy there. Get in, good girl. And I might make her walk at my side for a moment. Let's go, good girl. Yes, get back, let's go. Leave it, let's go. Yes, let's go. Good girl, sit. Okay, good girl. Now, this is obviously not something that I would do until my dog understood how to do some behaviors. This is definitely a more advanced step. This is something that you would do once your dog's ready to be tested a little bit more independently out. But often when I'm teaching my dog like agility behaviors, I want to be able to put the toy, leave it on the ground there, and be able to work her and have her understand not to go to that toy unless I tell her. So before we've done any of these exercises, she's learned tugging out. She's learned how to do behaviors. She's also learned a leave it command. So if I release her, okay, good girl. You notice she didn't grab it. The reason why she didn't grab it is she didn't hear this. Get it. Yay! Good girl. And that goes back to that very first exercise I showed you guys. Here, come on. With the tug and the out, she understands you don't grab things until you hear me say get it, so that she understands when to start and stop. And again, in order to learn these things, you have to have really great self-control, which is something I've implemented with my little border collie, because she's a busy girl. She needs a lot of exercise. She's a very intense dog. But one of the ways that I can have great control over her is by doing games like this where she has to have impulse control and she needs to be able to give me some focus and attention before we do things that allow her to be really crazy and have a lot of fun, which I love for her to do, knowing that at the end of the day, I sort of get the final say. Okay? Good?
Good, yeah, I thought that was great.
Okay, come with me.
Drop the knowledge bombs. Oh, Beeline. Hi, buddy. Beeline's coming over for the
Come here, Lippy.
Hi, buddy.
Hop it up.
It's always funny when she comes over here for this like one camera shot, because she's always like either looking at me or licking me, and occasionally we'll watch the videos after, and the entire time Beeline's just like looking at me.
She's so
like
cute, this girl.
It's pretty adorable.
Yep.
So using toy in training, has so many benefits. And as we talked briefly about the fact that you can switch it up. Maybe if you're working on your recalls, maybe if you're, you feel like the recalls, your come command is starting to either lose a little bit of its flair, or you're looking to just change things up. Keeps it interesting for you. and it keeps it interesting for your dog. You can toss a toy into the mix. Maybe you do 2 in a row where there's a beautiful sit ending. Maybe your third one, you do a tug ending. Or maybe your dog's flying in, you do a fetch. You throw it between your legs. The dog drives all the way through. You can get, once you have good, your dog has a good understanding of how to play with toys with you, like how to use the out command, how to do their fetch. It opens up a whole world of possibilities when it comes to motivation in your dog training. And I don't want you to overlook the fact that, if you have a dog that doesn't love toys at the beginning, that it doesn't mean your dog just doesn't like toys, game over. There's lots of ways to get them excited about it. And even some of the tips, for sure, even some of the tips we've talked about tonight, can really stimulate that toy drive. And for those of you who are struggling with a dog who loves toys way too much, and it's nearly, it's challenging for you to do anything if your dog gets a toy, then make sure that you work again on some of the exercises we talked about, figuring out what that threshold is, really understanding, how much your dog can take before you need to issue your out command, so that you can build that threshold so it's longer and longer and longer. Mm-hmm. Episode 1 of Season 3 has been a lot of fun. Yeah. I want to say a huge thank you to our moderators, Esty Cruiser, and especially Dan. Lots of links looting, just dropping beautiful stuff here. So many resources. It's so much fun watching all of the stuff that Dan gets to share.
B just brought me.
Oh, wow. See?
Yeah, that's very nice, B.
It's the skunk toy. Well, isn't that nice of her? Very nice.
Very nice sharing.
A quick reminder. So we have our merch. We just got our online store up and running. 20% off, but it's only for 24 hours. So at 8:30 or whatever tomorrow, the discount is going to be discontinued. So if you want some stuff, not a lot of stock in there. I was only able to take so much from our actual physical store, but you guys have asked so often, I wanted you guys to be able to, have access to some of the training stuff that we use. So
look at what she brought me now.
Oh wow, she's just switching things up. The other thing, lots of great questions in here. Lots and lots of really, excited people with their new puppies, working with their older dogs. It's really important that when you watch these, that you take this information, go outside. Becky Parker, hey, Becky, it's nice to see you. I missed you. I'm not sure how long you've been in the chat. But you take this information, you need to go do something about it. I have a math problem for you. Deep back in the woods, there's a pond, and there is a log at the side of the pond. There's 5 frogs sitting on the log. They've been sitting there all day doing frog stuff. You know how frogs do. And
where are you going with this?
And after a while, 3 of the frogs decide to jump off the log. How many frogs are left on the log, Kayl?
2.
You say 2?
Well, I wasn't actually listening to your story, but I'm pretty sure you said 5, and then you said -3. But I feel like that's too easy. So there's obviously something else going on.
Right, you're absolutely right, Kayl. So 3 frogs decided to jump off. But there's a big difference between deciding to do something and actually doing it. So there's still 5 frogs on the log. And I want you to look at it this exact same way. You're taking all of this information in. I see so many people who are like, oh, this is a great video. And then I see them, a couple of weeks later in another video saying, I'm still having this problem. Take this information and go do something about it. I really want you to have a great 2020 with your puppy or with your rehome dog, your new dog. Maybe it's your old dog and you're coming here for some, exciting new things that you can train with them. But you got to get out there and do it. It's the most important part of all of this. And I want to say thank you guys for watching episode 1 of season 3. If this is your first time on the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We publish new videos every week to help you to have a well-behaved 4-legged family member. And don't be a frog on the log. Go out there and train your dog. That's pretty good, eh? That's a good one. We got to go. Okay. I want to wish you guys happy training. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.